Hello everyone, and welcome to this new video about Dark Souls. Now the last time I made a video like this, the most major complaint that I got was that I didn't do any editing on the video. And so my solution to that is to make a PowerPoint, because I don't want to learn how to do editing. I kind of already know how to do editing. I do have Sony Vegas, but it would take me like 8 hours for like a 15-minute video like this, and I don't feel like spending 8 hours on this video. I only feel like spending maybe an hour or two on this video, and so that's why we get a PowerPoint that I slap together in like 15 minutes. Um, so the inspiration for this video was some discussion that my friends were having in a Discord about the new Illusory Wall video. I'll put the link in the description for y'all to take a look at. It's a pretty good video. It's about in the defense of the Capra demon. Now, I fucking hate the Capra demon. Let's take a look at this guy. This fucking huge bastard. And the whole gist of the in defense of Capra Demon video is that he is a puzzle boss, right? He's a boss that you are not meant to fight straight on, right? He's a boss that you are meant to experiment with, that you're meant to figure out some system mechanics with, and so on and so forth. However, it fails at that. It fails at that for a variety of reasons. Now, to give you a little bit of backstory on this, when I was, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, whenever Dark Souls 1 came out, right, I was on a ski trip with my dad, and I was playing some Dark Souls in my downtime, and I got to that guy, and, oh man, I had a terrible fucking time with that guy. I think I must have done like 20 or 30 like runbacks on that guy. I did a lot. Like I spent like 4 hours in Dark Souls getting to that guy, and the next 4 hours fighting that guy, just that guy. And I was running my head against the wall. I knew nothing. I didn't know about the wolf ring. I didn't know about aural dissonance or whatever the fuck it was called, right? I didn't know about hidden body or anything like that. I didn't know any of these tricks. I just knew there's a guy, there's two dogs, and there's some staircase in the arena, and my brain, because let's be real here, I criticize this boss a lot, but the staircase is like right there, and your first instinct is kind of go for that staircase, because the one thing that the game has taught you about up to this point is that you can jump attack on enemies. And the Illusory Ball video goes over that too, about how the game teaches you a very limited amount of things about the game in its tutorial, and it probably should have gone a little bit more in depth about like what poise does, and like setting you up to experiment a little bit with this boss, right? And in my slideshow here, I bring up the point. If you're a new player, you have no idea what anything is, and you know Dark Souls is about dying a lot, right? The game fucking comes out there with prepare to die, which I think, a lot of people have already criticized that pretty openly, that prepare to die is like a fucking terrible slogan for Dark Souls, because it's really like, yeah, you are going to die a lot, but it should be prepare to experiment, right? Prepare to learn how the game works and figure out like different ways of doing things and different ways to go and stuff. My second point here is that the run back is annoying. And the Illusory Wall video brings up that you can do the back way, and I did find the back way, and that back way is a little bit safer, but it's also a lot longer, and so it just increased the amount of time it takes between pulls of Capra Demon, right? The other points, the room is claustrophobic, there's ads that you have to take care of, and the game is a game about dying a lot. And the camera sucks, and my little sister was playing, and the sun was in my eyes, and I was going through a rough time, and boy, was I ever going through a rough time. Delicious Mountain... No, this is Mountain Dew. This is Monster Peach Tea Rehab Energy Drink. Um, so, illusory wall video. My main complaint about the video is, how's a new player supposed to know any of this? It's not entirely the game's fault. The video even goes over uh, changes that they would make to make it so that a new player uh, was better able to experiment, right? Um, but my main thing is, like, the players need to know experimentation is on the table, right? And I don't think Dark Souls really does a good job at letting you know that experimentation is on the table, right? When you go into Dark Souls, especially modern Dark Souls, like Elden Ring and stuff, you can kind of complete the game as an action game, right? You don't really have to engage that much with the mechanics of the game, right? Beyond the basics, right? Like leveling up your health, leveling up your stamina, leveling up your damaging ability, upgrading your weapon and stuff. Like all that is very surface level RPG mechanic stuff that you don't really have to think very hard about in order to engage with, right? Where the game gets a lot of depth is with all the extra options, right? And this has been true in every Dark Souls game. Like, it's not like this is exclusive to Dark Souls 1 or Kingsfield or anything like that, right? But I feel like it's been de-emphasized so much since the advent of Dark Souls 1 being a more action-oriented game. Uh, and that is good and bad, right? Obviously, I like the action parts of Elden Ring, right? I like that I can just go through Elden Ring and fight everything with my cool sword, and I get to roleplay as a character and all that stuff, but like the game doesn't really encourage you to experiment beyond just finding cool stuff and like going through the open world and looking for things, and then you find a thing and then, oh, what does this thing do, right? Like it doesn't really encourage you to do anything beyond that, especially on your first playthrough. Uh, And on your first playthrough is when you might benefit the most from experimentation. And that's where this is not entirely the game's fault, right? The game doesn't exist in a vacuum, and the community plays a big factor in how people perceive the game. And in the Illusory Ball video, again, they go over how uh, the community has steered players wrong in a lot of ways on the Capra demon, right? You know, you can. I know you can cheese him. I know that you can skip him entirely, right? You can just go the back way uh, into Blight Town. You don't need the key. Um, there's all these other options for him, and that is those are options that the game is pushing you towards as well, right? Like I don't think cheesing the boss is necessarily a wrong answer to the puzzle, right? uh, Capra Demon is a puzzle boss, and choosing not to engage with him is totally an option, right? And Elden Ring, that's totally an option. Like Elden Ring greatly encourages you to just not engage with something that you are able to do, right? Um, and if there's one thing I will give DLC Radon in Elden Ring is that it was the first boss besides the Elden Beast that made me actually engage with its systems on a deeper level, right? Like, and even in before the DLC, right, with Elden Beast, the only thing Elden Beast made me do was just look up what holy res there is and swapping my weapon from a holy weapon to a pure physical weapon because the boss was heavily resistant to holy damage, right? Radon made me change my entire build. And the game, Elden Ring, it gives you, like, 15, like, larval tears. Like, even if you're not even looking for them, you're still going to end up with, like, 7 or 8 larval tears just, like, swap your build around. So, like, clearly there is some intention for you to experiment with your build. But in Dark Souls 1, there's a lot less of that, right? So, grinding out a level or two to get the int to get Aural distraction, right, is a little bit of a big ask. It's a little bit of a big ask for a new player who doesn't even know what Aural extraction does. a distraction does, um, or even how it could be useful, right? Like, you have no way of really knowing how that is going to be useful. So, how do we encourage players to experiment? We slow the game down. We dial back that action aspect of the game. If simply brute forcing your way by getting good and dodge rolling is not an option in the game, it forces you to engage with those deeper RPG mechanics. And that brings me up to the next part of this video. Games that do that. I have not played all of these games. I am currently focused on Dread Delusion right now. Um, and I haven't been streaming it mostly because I don't think anyone's gonna watch it, but it is a very good game, and I think that it espouses the virtue of slowing a game down and focusing in on some of these other systems that you can implement in a game like this, right? A big thing in Dread Delusion, for me at least, is the way that you interact with traveling in that game is super interesting, right? Like, there isn't one catch-all bonfire in Dread Delusion, right? There's tons of different ways to travel through the game. Like, the save point is disconnected from the portals, which is disconnected from your respawn points. Like, and, like, you have to kind of walk everywhere because there isn't a good solution for like immediately teleporting places, right? Like you can save and quit the game and you'll respawn at the nearest save point, right? The last save point that you saved at, which is a way of teleporting. There's also the home spell, which does the same thing. It teleports you back to the last save point that you were at. There's the portals, which you have to find and then activate. There's the respawn points, which are different from everything else. They're a completely unique thing in the game. And that forces you to engage with the systems in the game because there isn't a one catch-all solution of like the bonfire as like a save point, a rest point, and all that stuff. Like, you know, even the resting, right? The ends are completely separate from the bonfires, the portals, and all that other stuff, right? Like, and there are beds in the game outside that you can sleep in that don't cost any money, and those are also completely separate. So like having a knowledge of the game and learning and forcing you to explore and engage in these mechanics sort of lends very well to what Dark Souls 1 was trying to do with the Capra demon, right? Now, I haven't run into a boss in Dread Delusion yet where I was like, oh man, like, I don't know what to do here, like, I need to experiment with the game at all. But I don't necessarily think there has to be something like that in the game in order to espouse the virtues that I'm trying to espouse, right? Um, Highly recommend checking out Dread Delusion. I'm probably going to hop on Lunacid after I'm done with Dread Delusion because that's the next game on the list of games that are like this. But yeah, another part of this, and this is kind of an aside here, but another part of this is when you are not an action game, when you are more focused on like the RPG side of things, right? It also forces you to engage with the world, and going back to the way that you move in the world, right? It forces you to look at the world. It forces you to consider the world from a different viewpoint, right? And Dark Souls 1 is fucking amazing at making you do that, right? If Dark Souls 1 had a transportation system similar to Dread Delusion, where the bonfires aren't a catch-all solution for transportation after you get the Lord Vessel, right? Like, oh my god, dude, that, like, I think Dark Souls 1 would be elevated extremely if it had some more mechanics like that, right? Um, and it dialed back on the action stuff. Everything in a game is a balance, right? Like, everything... everything in a game fights against everything else in the game. You know, if you go heavily on the action, that is fighting against the in-depth RPG mechanics, right? That fights against players figuring out how to break the game because there's this get good mentality, right? Um, so what are the conclusions for this game? Um, Capra Demon is a shitty poo-poo garbage boss, and I'm a big baby. And what if a big strong mommy gamer came to help me? Haha. No, I'm just joking. The actual conclusion to this that I'm trying to reach here is that you should go play Dread Delusion, and I would think it would be really cool if FromSoft like went back a little bit on the action mechanics of a game. Like, don't get me wrong, Sekiro is cool as fuck, but it's way too action for me, right? It's way too like reaction based. It's way too reflex based for me personally. And it's designed that way, right? Like it is designed to be a game that is hard for everyone to do. It's not like uh, Dark Souls where like anyone should be able to beat a Dark Souls game as long as you engage with those RPG mechanics, right? Um, but I would like to see them do that for the RPG mechanics instead of the action side of things, right? I'd love to see a modern Kingsfield game by them. I'd love to see something that's a little bit slower, that forces you to slow down, that's focused more on like figuring things out and stuff. Uh, Having more puzzle bosses, having more uh, maybe RPG-ish solutions to things than just running your head against the wall and dodging things, right? Like, I think that would be cool and unique, and it definitely could be a direction for the series to go. If they don't decide to, then there are still tons of options. We are littered with options from the indie side of video games, so I'm not going to be unsatisfied by this. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more. Uh, and have a good day. I love you. Bye.